In this video, we are going to go through the logic of our app and then translate the logic into jQuery code structure. So first of all, once we load our app, we are going to be placing some text in the text input. So if we try this example text and click on the Start Reading button, what's going to happen is that we are going to turn our text into an array of words. So we're going to transform that input into this array, which is an array of 10 words in our example. So in our code, we are going to get the number of words inside our array. In our case, it's 10 words. If the number of words is greater than 1, then we're going to read the text and show the controls, just like this. Okay? Otherwise, if our text is too small, we're going to get an error message. Now let's understand how the reading function works. First, let's paste our example text in there and click on the Start Reading button. Okay, to be able to see this in a clear way, let's reduce the speed and start again. So you can see that we are showing one word at a time. Okay? So these words are inside our array. And to get them, we're going to use the index of each element. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a counter, which is going to start at 0. And every time we show a word there, we're going to show the word of index counter. So for example, the first word is going to be the word of index 0, and that's going to be the value of our counter at the beginning when we initiate it. So we're going to initiate this counter at 0. And at the same time, we are going to set the min and max values of our progress slider to 0 for the min and 9 for the max. So 9 refers to the length of our array minus 1, or the number of words minus 1. Basically, the value of the progress slider is going to be exactly the value of the counter. Okay? Now, once we initiated our counter and set the min and max values of our progress slider, we are going to show the word of index counter. So at the beginning, the counter is set to 0, so we're showing the word of index 0, which is the first word. And then we are going to set the slider value to the value of the counter. So we're going to be looking at the value 0, so our counter is going to be there. Okay, and we're showing the word of, or the elements of index 0. And then we're going to increase the counter by 1. So now our counter is 1. Now we're going to check, is this the last word inside our array? If the answer is no, then we're going to go back to this loop. And this loop is going to be executed every 200 milliseconds at the beginning, which is the standard frequency, which corresponds to 300 words per minute. Okay? We will see later on how to change this frequency using the speed slider. Alright. Now we're going to show the word of index counter, which is index 1, which is the second word. Okay? And also we're going to set the slider to 1, which is the value of our counter. And we're going to calculate the progress. So every time we calculate the progress. So at the beginning, the progress was 0. And now the progress is going to be 11%. So to calculate our progress, we're going to use the value of our counter. And if we divide the value of the counter by the number of words, at the end, once we get there, the counter is going to be 9, but the number of words is 10. And 9 out of 10 is not going to give us 100%. So rather than dividing by the number of words, we're going to divide by the number of words minus 1, which is 9. Okay, so the progress percentage is going to be the counter value divided by the number of words minus 1. Okay, and then we multiply that by 100 to get a percentage. Okay. Now we are going to continue executing this loop until we hit the last word. Okay, and once we get to the last word, we are going to stop reading, and then we're gonna keep only the new button, just like this. Okay, now if we are reading and we click on the pause button, we are going to stop reading, hide the pause button, and show the resume button. If we click on the resume button, we're going to resume reading and show the pause button and hide the resume button. Now if we click on new, we're just gonna reload our app, just like this. Okay. Now let's move to the sliders. So if we look at the font size slider, if we slide the handle, first of all, in jQuery Mobile, if we slide any slider handle, to be able to change the value of the slider, we need to refresh that slider. Okay, and we're going to see how to do that in the code. So once we refresh the slider, then the slider is going to have the new value. Okay. Then we are going to change the text font size using this new value. So that's the text font size is going to change. And also we're going to change that number, which is inside a span element, okay, using the new value of our slider. Now, if we look at the reading speed slider, it's going to be the same. So once we slide, first of all, we need to refresh the slider so that it got the new value. And then we are going to change the frequency of the set interval function that we were using before to do those loops in or every 200 milliseconds. Okay, so we're going to change that frequency of 200 milliseconds using the new value. Okay, and by the way, the frequency is going to be calculated using the speed as following. So we're going to go for 60 seconds divided by the speed, or 60,000 milliseconds divided by the speed. Okay, and we're going to see this in detail in the code. Now, if we slide the progress handle, first we need to refresh our slider so that it gets the new value. As we said earlier, the value of this slider is the same as the value of the counter, so we need to update the counter value to the new value of the slider. Also, we're going to need to calculate the progress percentage and show it here. Okay, so again, the progress percentage is the counter value divided by the number of words minus 1, and then we multiply by 100 to get a percentage. And finally, we're going to need to show the new word using the index, which is the value of the counter. Okay. Now that we understood the logic of our app, we are ready to move to the jQuery code structure. So let's create a JavaScript file and call it index.js. And let's go to the HTML file and link it to this JavaScript file using a script element. So I've got already a script element there. I'm going to give it a source attribute that's going to go to the JavaScript file. Okay. Now, the structure is going to be really simple after we understood the logic. Okay. So first of all, we are going to declare all the variables we're going to need. So for example, we're going to need a variable where we're going to store the output of the set interval function, and other variables like the frequency, the length of the array we were talking about, the array where we're going to store our words, and so on. Okay. Then we're going to write code to execute when we load our page. So when we load the page, we're going to show only a few elements, including the text inputs and the start reading button. And we're going to need to hide all the other elements. And then we're going to move to the code corresponding to clicking on the Start Reading button. So once we start reading, we're going to be doing a few things. Okay, so first of all, we need to show some elements and hide some other elements. Also, we're going to be executing our reading function that we covered earlier in the logic of the app. And we're going to be doing other things in the code. And then we're going to move to clicking on the New button, clicking on the Pause button, and on the Resume button. Okay, and all these were covered in detail in the logic. Okay, so it's really simple to translate that into jQuery code. Then we're going to move to the sliders, and we're going to write code to execute once we slide the handle of each of these sliders: the font size slider, the speed slider, and the progress slider. Okay, and at the end, we're going to place all the functions we're going to need. For example, the reading function. So in the next video, we're going to start writing jQuery code and build all the functionalities of our app.